guess, yeah, hurt the relationship between Turner and Cardullo, and that his overruling of Turner kind of eliminated that autonomy that Turner thought he was going to have, because Cardullo wanted it kind of his way. And so I just want to say I agree with that.
Yeah, great point, you guys.
Well, I have to agree as well. Sorry. I was just going to point out that Cardullo seemed to, not only was a micromanager and he wanted things his ways, but everything was black and white with him. It was either you were doing good or you were doing bad. And it said in there that he saw people as either competent or incompetent, and he had no patience for incompetence. But it was his level of incompetence, and he didn't communicate what those levels were with anybody else so that you knew how to not be incompetent.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so nobody knew what was expected, so then they don't know what to strive for. And you can't do that because you and I can have completely different opinions of what we think is useful in that situation. So the next one, it's a two-part question. It says, how did Turner get himself into this predicament? And then what is going on for Cardullo? And I mean, we've kind of already talked about some of these things, but, you know, I mean, maybe we'll just spend a second longer focusing a little bit more on how both of them are in this predicament, and not necessarily why or what they're doing, but more of like actions they've taken to get them here.
I'm going to start with Turner. He had specific worries about taking this job that he just disregarded. I wrote down, like, he hadn't actually met anyone except for Cardullo at the company. The company was financially struggling. He knew that Cardullo had split attention between the two different jobs that he was holding. And he ignored all that. And then wasn't it the recruiter that also told him, beware? And he didn't listen. He should have thought more about that and figured out what to do about those situations, or a plan of action to address them.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he went with his gut at all. I think his gut was telling him to do something else, and he just kept moving forward. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. He's getting confused because his name is Turner, so he thinks you're all talking about him.
No, he'll be smarter than this Turner. But I think, too, one of the things that – I don't know if I misread it, but one of the things that stood out to me is he went home and started packing up his apartment before he even had a job offer. So I think part of this is he just was looking for, like, kind of that vanity, career-changing stepping stone almost. Like, I don't feel like he was invested in this company at all. And like you guys have said, he didn't listen to his gut. He completely ignored some obvious facts that, for me, would have been huge red flags. Like, okay, well, I need to meet people in this organization because you could be a great face for the company, but all the people I have to work with could be complete idiots. And then the problem is the financial struggle. So obviously there's stress within the company, and that means that things aren't going well. And there's going to be a lot of pressure to perform, and that means working with people is going to be difficult because they're feeling that stress.
Another thing that I think would have helped him early on is, like, after he had started, from some of the people that he came in contact with, they were really excited that he got that job, that they got to deal with him instead of Cardullo. And so that right there should have been kind of a sign or a red flag. Like, okay, why do these people not like working with Cardullo? I think one in particular was like Tim Kelly. And so I feel like if he would have met people beforehand, he might have gotten a little bit more of a feel and a little more of a clue, instead of coming in and then he realized, okay, something's up here.
How do you guys think, so we kind of talked about this with Cardullo and what's going on with him a little bit, but how do you think he got himself in that predicament? Like, what do you think he could do differently to avoid the stresses that he's feeling?
I think one of the problems that Cardullo is having is that he sees that Turner has come in and kind of taken a leadership role and that people respect him. And I think because he's a micromanaging, like, he has to be in charge person, it's a threat to his pride. And so I think he's put himself in that position by viewing someone else as coming in as king of the jungle and taking his little throne away.
I think it's such a hard thing sometimes people that are big micromanagers don't even realize that they are. And so it's just completely in their personality. And so it's such a hard thing. He definitely has to get some off of his plate, but I don't even know if he even recognizes that he's doing this because it's just so embedded in who he is.
I would have to agree with Zach. I don't think that he even really recognizes that this is an issue, nor does he think he's going to change. He has been given all of the power as he's the president. He's been like this for years. It's not like this was an onset that recently came on. Like, he's obviously not accountable to the corporation to the point that, look, he's able to make bad decisions that lose the company money, and he's not even worried about his job at all. So I think at the end of the day, what I thought this was probably the hardest case study of them all, because I thought with each of them, there was some form of a resolution that could be met or some form of training or option. I think with this, from how I took Cardulo, is that he's a line in the sand type of guy. Like, it's his way or the highway. And I didn't think that there was an opportunity for him to change. And I didn't think that there was going to really be given an opportunity for Jamie Turner to even get that meeting or get that respect or get that understanding that he was hired for a certain job. So there's just my thoughts.
Now let me ask you guys this. Do you guys think that it's appropriate the way that like both of them interact with each other in the office and other employees?
Absolutely not. I think there's no question on that. But I don't think that, from how I took the case study, I think that Jamie, there's no way of rectifying it, because obviously it doesn't say they got an HR department, but he's the president of the company. So if he goes to him, okay, he's just going to probably be fired. If he goes above him, the guy above him obviously has respect for Cardulo and isn't going to betray him. So I just think that, of course, it's not okay how they talk to each other and how they blatantly disregard respect for one another. But at the same time, I don't think that there's a real path to rectifying the situation.
That was kind of like my thinking too, is that, I just think this guy doesn't even realize how he talks to people and how he is. And I think his best bet is to try to have open dialogue with them, but we know that he's already tried that and it's failed. So my thinking is, at what point do you just say you cut your losses and just say it's a personality issue that's probably never going to be resolved?
I'm going to interrupt because I want you guys to keep thinking on this line of thought, but that's the last question that I want us to discuss. So I want you guys to kind of take these, what Ben and Zach have been saying, and think on it, and then we'll come up with some, continued ideas in a minute, because you guys are on I like where we're going with this. I think you guys have some really good points. So the next question is, what did Pat Cardulo and Jamie Turner initially bring to the situation at MLI that would seem to ensure success and failure? I think we've done a pretty good job of talking about what they brought that would ensure failure. Let's talk about what they brought that was positive, if anything.
I wrote down that Cardulo had the experience, he had a sense of humor, and he had the relationships with the Triple S company. I mean, he knew what the parent company, hopefully what they needed. And Turner he was a people person who had clear focus and the ability to lead. And he did have enough experience to do the job he was given, even though it was in a slightly different area.
It said that Turner had graduated top of his class, and and he did have a lot of past experience. And then Cardulo, as you said, he had a lot of connections and some good relationships up the line, across the line, and then also with like Chen and Garcia down the line. He had a lot of good relationships, which is surprising if he's treating people. He must treat some people really poorly and some people really well, with that black and white thing you were saying. So
another thing is, people as soon as he got on, people really respected Turner, and so people listened to him early on. He got a lot of respect from his subordinates, And so I feel like this kind of gave him the keys to have a lot of influence. I mean, which eventually was kind of overtaken by Cardullo, so he didn't have as much influence, but he was well respected right off the bat, which tells me that he probably treated people well. He probably had good ideas, and so he must have been doing something right to earn the respect of so many people.
And I think it can be said for both of them, as they both seem to be like pretty calculated individuals where, you know, they tried to make intelligent decisions based on facts and data and not just by the seat of their pants. I mean, obviously we've got cases or instances in both where they fly off the handle, but I think overall you could make the argument that they're the individuals that like to prepare and they make those decisions based on that, which helps with the respect, you know, and earning of the trust of others. And then, like I said, I know we've kind of covered their things that they brought that would, you know, doom them for failure. Is there anything else you guys feel you want to add, or are we okay on that part of it?
I just want to add in what you kind of just mentioned, the flying off the handle. And you said, you know, it didn't happen that often. But what's interesting about that is it doesn't matter how clear and focused and everything you are. Flying off the handle one time can be excused. But if you're not listening to people and you're yelling at someone in front of other people, even twice, all of a sudden you've lost all of the respect and trust from your co-workers, meaning people above, to the side, and below, and you've basically broken that team apart. And the thing is, both of them did it. Turner did it with Chen. I couldn't believe how he interacted with her. That was so petty and ridiculous on both of them. I'm like, how old are you? So.
And
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, that expense account that he wasn't willing to pay for the lunch, that Pat was unwilling to reimburse Jan for the lunch. That was really petty and bothersome to me.
I think I wrote in my write-up as I said, this is a professional environment, not a schoolyard, because that behavior, you know, and taking an email and crumpling it up in our office and message received, like, that's something I would have done in, you know, high school. That's not appropriate behavior from functioning adults. And the sad thing is these interactions will stick with those that witness them far longer than anything positive that they'll do. They could be the best model leader for the next 6 months, and it won't matter because that will always cast such a dark shadow over whatever they do that it's really hard to repair. So yeah, you guys, awesome points. All right, are we okay to move on? Or is anybody else? I don't want anybody to feel okay. The next question is, what were the key choice points where either of them could have done things differently? That's a loaded question. Okay, I'll kick us off, and then you guys just tell me to shut up when you think of something. I think probably a couple of the key points is in the beginning. Turner and Cardullo should have sat down and said, okay, like, here I am, I'm new to the company. Like, what are your goals? Where do you, like, 6-month and 12-month goals? Let's look at those and see what I can do. And then I think that Turner should have probably sought, I don't know if counseling would have been appropriate or you know, referring to books, but after his time at Timberlow, or anyways, you guys know that his previous company where he had poor interactions there, they said he built a pretty strong reputation of having poor personal interactions that negatively affected the company. I think he should have tried to solve that, you know, and being like, okay, I can't continue to do this everywhere I go, because obviously that's a consistent problem for him. So yeah, I don't know. Those are just a couple of key points where I was like, that would have been game-changing moments.
Yeah, I agree with that. That was one thing I put in my write-up, is I felt like Turner and Cardullo should have had a lot more meetings and a lot more communication to get on the same page, because it never really seemed like they were on the same page. And so if they would have had meetings where they could have sat down and discussed plans on how to get to where they wanted to go, and discussing those goals, I feel like they could have been on the same page, and then they could have kind of counseled together on what actions to take, instead of, you know, one making the decision and that's it, it's my way or the highway. Because if they could have counseled together, then they could have had different perspectives, brought up different points, and kind of made better decisions together.
I can't remember if we said this yet, but Turner should have researched more before even accepting the position. I know we've said it, but that was a key point. He didn't have to be in this frying pan. And then I can't understand what I wrote for the other one. I've been trying to read that sentence, and I think what I was trying to say is, so when there was that project, after they talked on the airplane and things were good, and there was this great idea, and Turner went for it, and then got shot down by Cordula. I think when he should have not taken no for an answer. He should have pressed his point, and because he'd done all that work and he had the contacts and he was ready to go, and just because Pat didn't like it or had changed his mind doesn't mean that he should have abandoned all the work that he'd done. I think he should have pressed for that.
That's actually one of the things that I wrote down, is that there should have been more push, either Cordulo accepting what Turner had proposed and what he'd put together, or Turner pushing more for, hey, you agreed that we were going to do this. We need to at least discuss it. But the other thing goes back to this volatile experience with Chin for me. Like, that was a huge turning point, I think, for Turner, is everything started to fall apart then. And if he had been able to keep his cool and keep that good rapport he had going with his, the people in his level and his subordinates, then it wouldn't be so bad. It's one thing to deal with a micromanaging supervisor, but it's an entirely different thing to deal with a lot of people who are just bickering and griping and, at each other all the time, because that's just a hostile work environment, where a micromanager is just frustrating on many levels, but you can at least deal with that one person if everyone else is working well together.
And I almost wonder if, like, during his interview process, if he intentionally kept him from meeting everybody, so that way Turner couldn't pick up on, like, the level of confrontation and the level of, problems within the organization. Because, it's pretty easy to pick up on those kinds of things when you walk into a room and you meet somebody, like, oh, okay, well, this is awkward. So maybe that would have been, good too, is to actually be like, oh, hey, like, I appreciate the interview. Do you mind if you introduce me to a couple people and I get to know them for a second? Because you guys are right. There's just so, I just feel like there's so many things in this that you just could have, I don't know, just avoided. Okay. Does anybody have anything else on that one? Okay. Last question, and this is, like I said, we had coming up, so hopefully you guys have some good ideas, is how, if at all, should Turner approach Cardullo at the end of the case? So in case you guys don't remember, the case ended with Turner hearing Cardullo's footsteps coming towards his office, and I think if I remember right, Turner was in the middle of in one of his moods. I can't remember. No, he was just doing a lot of reflecting. So, anyways, that's where we're at.
So I kind of agree with what Ben and Zach said earlier. I felt like this was a pretty tough case, and it was kind of tough to come up with any sort of resolution. And so I didn't really see any clear way. So what I said in my write-up was just I thought that he should have gone into Cardullo's office and talked to him and just been very bold with him and very frank and say, look, like, these are the times that you've overmined me. I was promised a lot of autonomy when you hired me, and you hired me for a reason, because I've excelled in the past and I have these skills, but I haven't been able to use these skills. So I feel like you should give me more freedom and allow me to help make more decisions, and you should listen to me more, because like with that research and the project that he presented to Cardullo that he shut down, and then with Cardullo's profit margin plan, he went to talk to him about that and tried to tell him how that wouldn't be a good idea. So I felt like he was just really bold and saying, look, like, I'm considering resigning because the situation is so bad. We need to do something to fix it. Then I feel like that might be strong enough for Cardullo to consider, okay, maybe we do need to do something to fix this, because I mean, Cardullo would have to be a complete idiot to think that there's nothing wrong here. Like there's obviously something wrong here. So if he was just bold with him, I feel like that's honestly the only thing that he could really do at this point.
I have to agree that it has to come down to communication. There's no way that this will be fixed unless there's communication, but it takes two parties to communicate. And all Turner can do is try his best to be clear and kind at the same time. He can be bold while still being kind and not attacking Cardullo's personality, but saying specific situations where he himself felt that there were ways that could have been handled better and that he would have felt more appreciated and things like that. And it may not, it's very likely that this is going to work out to where they become buddies and everybody becomes a team. But Cardullo could not keep being the president of both of these separate areas for much longer. Like even the higher ups will see that that's not a possibility. So I think Turner actually needs to figure out what he wants. Does he want to be in this company? Is this what he wants to spend the next 20 years doing? Does he want to work towards these goals and ambitions that this company has? And if he doesn't, then he shouldn't be trying to fight this battle. He needs to go find something else that he wants to do. And that's probably, for me, the biggest thing is what is it that Turner actually wants from this? Does he want to just be there and be happily involved, or does he want to actually make a difference and be passionate about this? Once he makes that decision, then he'll be able to say to Cardullo or whoever he ends up having to talk to, what needs to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think like what should happen now in this moment is when Cardullo comes in, and talks about whatever he needs to talk about, just have Turner tell him like, hey, like, I appreciate you coming in. Like, hey, on Friday, let's meet together. I need to gather my thoughts on a couple of things I want to talk to you about, and then go in, and have the decision already made. Okay, am I staying here? Am I not staying here? If I am staying here, here's things that I'd like to see change. Here's how communication needs to work. Here's how this needs to work. He's a VP of sales and marketing, so he's not a small fish. It's not, so the president of the company has to work with him and has to take into account for some of the things that he suggests. And if he really is that much of a line in the sand, black and white kind of guy, then having a frank conversation with him shouldn't be that big of a deal. And honestly, at this point, Turner doesn't have anything to lose. Like, he's not happy there. Things are miserable. You guys have all, said that. So it's either you make an effort or you just continue to suffer in silence. And obviously suffering in silence isn't his thing, because now he's taking it out on other people.
I think I'd wave the white flag on this one, because I don't know if, like I said, those kinds of people are just they don't even realize they're micromanagers. They don't realize they treat people like dirt. And let's say he has the frank conversations with them, and 2 months later it's exactly the same, because this guy just doesn't even realize his behavior, and you're left being dragged out over another miserable few months. And so I think I'm all about finding a job in a place that'll make you happy. And it's obvious that a lot of people aren't happy, so I think I would just resign and start job hunting again.
I have to agree with you, Zach. I've been holding back this whole time because I lived this last year, and I know I've mentioned this job that I had for that short period of time where I had this micromanaging supervisor, and I had warnings before I went in from other people about what it was going to be like. I had frank conversations with her where things had to change, and she'd be like, yeah, and then and then it'd be back to the same thing. We had a great group of people who were trying to work under her, and were just so frustrated all the time. And I eventually waved my white flag and came home. I was like, this is not worth the stress and frustration of living with someone like that. And the thing is, she had no idea how much of a micromanaging jerk she was, and she would fly off the handle, and it's not worth it. It's just find something else.
I agree with what you guys said. That was kind of my end result, or my thought about it, just because we had, he was already miserable going to work. And so I thought the only solution from this would be him quitting, because obviously he's has an MBA, he has a degree, he has, experience, although it may look bad at him jumping around like you said in it, but in the end, he could find a good job where he's happy. I don't think that Cardulo is going to change even if you talk to him. So I thought the best way was just him quitting.
I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm just like completely opposite. I don't even, because my opinion is like, hey, like I've got a good job. I'm secure with what's going on here. This is a company with a lot of potential, and there's a lot of potential here. Like, I'm just going to figure out how to work with this guy. And it might take, 18 months of us meeting frequently and communicating. But as soon as that channel of communication's open, then it becomes a lot better. I mean, I've worked with people where you just like, I've been in the oil fields, I've done farming, I've done construction. So, I mean, some of those guys, like you get in a disagreement and they'll just beat you up, after work, and they're just, that's just how they settle it. And you're like, wow, well, this is crazy. Or they'll get in your face and scream and shout, but you have to figure out how to work with them, because you can't just always run away and change jobs. And, the problem Turner faces is that the job market's not great. And so there's not a whole lot of potential for him. He's got buddies that are, classmates that graduated with him that are having trouble finding jobs. And so I think if he determines it's something that a company he wants to be a part of, then to put forth the sacrifice. But if it's not a company he's interested in because of the type of work or the product, then yeah, I'm all on board with the whole jump ship and go find something different. But I don't know. There's always going to be Cardulos everywhere. Every place I've worked, there's always a Cardulo. And you just have to figure out how to work around them or work with them, because yeah, they may not know that they're a bear, but if you can figure out how to work their attitude or manipulate it in your benefit, as weird as that sounds, then I think you can make progress. So I don't know, just devil's advocate on that.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate to you. How long do you let it go on is really the question, because if someone's not going to change, and I don't think Cardulo is the type that's going to change. Now, I did mention before that he's not going to be there forever. He can't stay that long. And so Turner's got to figure out how long he's willing to wait it out. But, are you willing to take a lesser paying job in order to find something that you're really passionate about? Or are you going to stick it out and be miserable? I guess is the question.
Well, I kind of had the same viewpoint as Parker, because at this point, Turner doesn't really have anything to lose. Like, if he's going to quit anyway, he may as well talk to him, and just see if there's anything that can be done to fix it. And so after having a frank conversation and being bold with him, I mean, first off, you got to see how he's going to react. If Cardulo has any sign that he wants to change or wants to work with him. And if he says that he wants to, then I would give it a month or two and see if he's actually going to live up to his word. But if he has a negative reaction to how Turner, confront him in a nice way. If he has a negative reaction to that, then he can just resign, which he was already thinking about doing in the first place. But I mean, he doesn't really have anything to lose, and the odds are Cardulo is probably not going to change. But I mean, it's like, why not? Why not try?
John, I'm complete with you. And like Tisha, that's a great, or I can never say your name right. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. But no, you're right. And like, it's how long do you put up with it? And then at what point do you say something? And I always just go by, if I feel like it's become a pattern, then I'll try to formulate a plan or a course of action. Everybody's human, right? We all have bad days. And so if it's like maybe over the course of a month, okay, maybe something's going on in our life right now. If it's 2-3 months, okay, this is a pattern and this is how this person interacts, and I need to come up with a course of action. But I don't know. I just am not one of those guys that just easily retreats and gives up just because somebody is, being a doofus. I had a guy at work that, he would come up in the middle of my sales and he'd interrupt me and he'd start just taking over the whole thing, and he'd interrupt it with false facts and say these comments that would make me seem like I was incompetent, like I didn't know what I was doing. And so it happened once, it happened twice, and then there was a third week, and I was like, okay, this is him, this is a pattern. So I was like, okay, I'm going to say something next time I come into work. I'll be gone for 2 weeks, and then when I get back, I'm just going to have a conversation. I always just try to enter it not accusatory and like, hey, I want to make things work because we're a team kind of thing. And he ended up dying, so I didn't have to have the conversation with him. So I felt kind of bad, but So I was like, well, okay, maybe that was good. But, I've had other guys on the team where it's like, hey, dude, like, this isn't okay, man. Like, we need to work together, and that's not working for me. So is there something I'm doing that's, causing that? And oftentimes, like, even if people don't know they're doing it, I just go in with the attitude of, I want to solve it, not I'm trying to tear you down and accuse you of anything. And that opens the foundation for a lot better work. And I think even though if Cardulo doesn't know he's doing this, the fact that somebody's approaching him and taking him on and saying, hey, dude, like, this is not working for me. And he presents a solution and not just a problem. I think it opens the foundation for a successful transition into better stuff. And things might not change. You guys are absolutely right. He might just be one of those individuals, and that's possible. And if he really hates his job that much, then yeah, he should be gone. But if it's worth him staying, then put in a little bit of sacrifice for it.
Can I say one more thing before we move on from that? Another path that Turner could take is to be a buffer between Cardulo and everybody else, like he was for Kelly, whatever his first name was. That same workplace, about 4 months into my job, I had a new supervisor be hired, and he became a really excellent buffer between me and the executive director, where I didn't have that buffer before. And because of him, I lasted 6 more months, which I wouldn't have then. And so if you can take that stress off the other people, so other people are allowed to work, if you're willing to be that buffer and put up with it, then that can be a really good place to be to make it all work.
Yeah, I love that. That was awesome. That's a really good point of view.
Yeah, I think that this case, to be honest, isn't so much about Cardulo. It's really ultimately about Turner. I mean, we're looking so outward. What should he do for this and this and that? And really what he has to do is look inwardly. And if he feels like he can approach him, then go ahead and that's fine. But if that's not something that you feel like you want to do or is not best for you or your family or whatever, sometimes you just got to do what's best for your family. So you really have to figure out, what do I go to work for, and is it worth it if I'm not happy?
No, I think that's a really good point, Zach. And I think that's one thing I like about the coursework at BYU Idaho is they focus so much on that happiness and the passion in it. And you guys are right. If there's no happiness or passion in it, then no amount of sacrifice is worth it. Because at the end of the day, you're giving up something too great. Do you guys have anything else you would like to add? Because that is it for all of the structured questions. No? All right. Well, you guys, thank you very, very much for your participation. This has probably been one of my favorite groups to work with at BYU Idaho, just because everybody actually does participate, actually has legitimate comments, and you guys have been really fun to bounce ideas back around. And it's nice because I always feel like I learn something from each of you, because nobody ever has the same point of view, but I always feel like I'm respected for my differing opinions. So thank you for that. Best of luck with the rest of you guys' studies. And if nobody else needs anything, then we'll go ahead and hang up.
I think Tisha had a question.
I do have a question. So I have to agree with everything Parker said. Best group I've ever had. Thank you. You guys are amazing.
Unless we're trapped in the wilderness, right?
Yes.
We're the worst group.
Okay. I asked my infantry buddy about that case study. Sorry to interrupt. I asked him about that, right? He literally trains military personnel in survival, and he said it was completely wrong. So we're not. He said, yeah. He's like, dude, you were on the right track. I was like, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
I have to agree with you. I talked to like 2 different people that would know, and they were like, absolutely not. That is not what you would do. Anyway, so on the accountability project, I didn't go back and read the instructions right before talking now, but are we supposed to present that to each other? Did I read something wrong?
In one of the, someone asked about it, and he wrote on the discussion board that he was in the process of changing of removing that requirement.
Okay, good. So we do not have to meet next week and give presentations to each other or something like that, or even email them to each other.
Gosh, I hope not. I mean, I love you guys.
I don't
Don't get me
believe so.
wrong.
I know. But okay, so here, if we end up having to do that, can we just email each other our stuff? Do we actually have to? Is that okay with everybody? Because I'm trying to submit it this week and not have to do this next week.
I've got 21 credits. The less I have to do next week would be way appreciated.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to do nothing next week. I'm just trying to go to graduation and just chill.
Good for
Yeah.
you. Congratulations.
I'm ready to pull my hair out.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody need anything else?
Just
Okay,
want to say
guys.
thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank
Thank
you
you
guys.
guys for the big group.
You guys were awesome.
Okay, best of luck to everybody.
Yeah, good luck. And I will post this on the discussion board. So that way you guys can have it for your memory lane.
Awesome.
Okay, guys. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you guys. All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.